I grew up in a quite normal household, living with my parents in a small but cozy house on the outskirts of town. While my dad worked late shifts at the plant, my mom worked as a cashier at the local grocery store. Despite the shortage of funds, we managed to make ends meet. Given that I was their only kid, they showered me with affection, even if I wasn't the easiest to raise. I was the sick one from a young age, with colds that seemed to last for weeks, and a variety of allergies that kept me at home more frequently than out. Let's just say that fashion was the least of our concerns, along with the fact that I was quite thin for my age. School served as a battlefield. I tried my hardest to fit in, but I always stuck out, and not in a good way. A student named Sarah made sure of it. Sarah was everything I wasn't: popular, gorgeous, and constantly looking like she was ready to walk into a photo shoot. I once tried to evade the bullies by arriving late to class. Slipping into my chair, I hoped for a peaceful day. That hope vanished the moment Sarah saw me. "Look who decided to show up," Sarah exclaimed, loud enough for the whole class to hear. "Thought you were too sick to come to school, or did you finally find something to wear that didn't come from a charity bin?" Her friends laughed as they imitated her rudeness. If I wanted to disappear, I had nowhere to go. But I said nothing. "Just leave me alone, Sarah." "What was that?" she said mockingly as she took a step closer. "You are not audible to me. Speak up." Before I could think of a response, our math teacher, Mr. Jenkins, entered, interrupting Sarah's next move. For the rest of the day, I kept quiet and only spoke when someone spoke to me. Even then, my voice was barely audible. At home, things were different. It was my haven. During dinner, my parents exchanged nervous glances when they noticed my dejected expression. "Nellie, honey, you hardly touched your meal." At school today, something happened. With a troubled tone, my mother asked. I shrugged and moved my food around on my plate. "It doesn't matter. I guess it's simply exhaustion." My father, who has yet to speak, put down his fork. "Nellie, you may talk to us. No matter what, we are here to assist." I nodded, realizing that they meant every word, but the humiliation of the day was beyond words. "Thank you, Dad. I'm just tired. I think I'm going to bed early." I dragged my feet toward the school gates the next day, bracing myself for another day of dodging glares and hushed remarks. My backpack felt heavy with textbooks and the heavy burden of worry of facing Sarah and her company. As I moved through the crowded hallways, trying to fit in, I heard the all-too-familiar voice that made my stomach flip. One of Sarah's loyal friends said, "Hey, ghost girl, try not to vanish before class starts," with a sneer. His nickname for me, a jab at my fair skin and tendency to keep to myself, caused the lockers to resonate with laughter from the other children. I didn't dare look up as I accelerated. "Just ignore him," I said to myself, but it didn't feel genuine. Today's first test was to survive homeroom. Unaware all the time, Mrs. Parker babbled on about the significance of attendance. Just as I settled into my back seat, Sarah entered with her gang wearing her newest fashionable outfit. "It's nice of you to come, Nellie." As she passed my desk, Sarah threw her hair in a loud jest and said, "We were afraid you got lost in your closet of hand-me-downs." A scream of laughter broke out. As I clenched my hands, I could feel the heat rising to my cheeks. "Just leave me alone," I said, more to my desk than to her. "What was that, Nellie? Speak up." Sarah turned to me with a sly smile and said, "We can't hear you." I shook my head, deciding to be quiet instead of fighting an unwinnable conflict. There was a brief pause of relief when the bell rang. Every class change seemed like a challenge since Sarah and her group were always ready to make their next snarky comment or insult. Lunch was no exception. I found a peaceful spot away from the chaos and violence of the restaurant, beneath an old oak tree. I was thinking about simply vanishing while I chewed on my lunch. "Hey, why are you sitting all by yourself here?" My seclusion was broken by a voice. Jake, a man from my English class, was there when I glanced up. Even if he wasn't Sarah's type, I was still cautious. I said, "I just like the quiet," thinking he would get the message and stop bothering me. Unfazed, he shrugged and took a seat next to me. "Suit yourself. Sarah's being a real piece of work, huh?" I was taken aback by his bluntness. "You could say that," I admitted, surprised by my own candor. "Listen, Nellie, you can't let her get to you." "She's all talk," Jake said, his tone earnest. I wanted to believe him, to find the strength to stand up to Sarah, but the words felt like a distant dream. Easier said than done, I mumbled, my gaze fixed on the grass below. The bell signaling the end of lunch snapped me out of my reverie. Gathering my things, I offered Jake a small smile. "Thanks for, sitting with me." "No problem." "See you around, Nellie," he said, heading back to the building. The rest of the day passed in a blur. With each class, I counted down the minutes until I could escape back to the safety of my home, but the day wasn't without its lessons. Jake's unexpected kindness was a glimmer of hope, a reminder that not everyone was against me. School had become a nightmare for me, one I couldn't wake up from. Every day was a repeat of the last, dodging insults, hiding from Sarah and her gang, and trying unsuccessfully to blend into the background. It wasn't long before the stress of it all started to take a real toll on me. I found myself feeling physically sick, my old ailments flaring up with a vengeance, alongside new ones. Headaches, stomach aches, you name it. I was a mess inside and out. One evening, I was curled up on the sofa, a blanket wrapped around me, trying to shake off the latest in a long line of migraines when Grandma came over. She had this way of seeing right through you, and that day was no different. "Nellie, this isn't just about being sick, is it?" she asked, her voice soft but firm. I tried to shrug it off. "I'm fine, Grandma. Just tired." She wasn't having any of it. "Nonsense. You're sick, yes, but it's not just physical, is it? It's those kids at school, isn't it?" I hesitated, then the floodgates opened. I told her everything about Sarah, the bullying, the constant dread that filled my days. Grandma listened, her expression growing more concerned by the minute. When I finished, she sighed deeply. "Nellie, your body is reacting to your stress and anxiety. It's making you ill. All these problems with your classmates are affecting your health." I was stunned. Could my being bullied be the reason I was always sick? Seeing my confusion, Grandma explained further. Stress can have a real physical impact on your body. It's important we address not just the symptoms, but the cause as well. The next day, Grandma sat down with my parents and me to discuss a plan. It was clear that continuing to attend school wasn't an option, not if things stayed as they were. After much discussion, my parents decided to switch me to distance learning. It was a big change, but one that felt necessary. The difference was night and day. Away from the constant harassment and anxiety, I started to heal. My headaches became less frequent, my stomach settled, and I found myself actually able to concentrate on my studies without the looming shadow of Sarah and her taunts. I was sitting at the kitchen table one afternoon, working through a set of math problems, when Mom came in to make a cup of tea. She watched me for a moment, then said, "You seem different, Nellie. Better. Happier, even." I hadn't really thought about it, but she was right. "I guess I am," I admitted. "It's weird not having to worry about what's going to happen at school every day." Mom nodded, a relieved smile spreading across her face. I'm just glad to see you feeling better. We should have done this sooner. The transition wasn't without its challenges. I missed the few friends I had, and adjusting to a new way of learning took time. But as days turned into weeks and weeks into months, I found myself grateful for the change. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I could breathe one morning as I logged on to my first virtual class. My mom knocked softly on my door. "Nellie, you okay with this? Missing your friends?" she asked, peeking in with a concerned look. I paused, considering. Kind of, I admitted. But it's better than before. At least I can focus now. She nodded, her eyes softening. "You just shout if you need anything. Okay, I'm right downstairs." As the days turned into weeks, I found a rhythm to my new routine. The subjects I used to struggle with began to make sense, thanks to the absence of distractions and the patient guidance of my online teachers. One afternoon, after a particularly successful math session, my dad came home early and found me at my desk. "Look at you, asking your classes without those bullies breathing down your neck," he said with a grin, ruffling my hair. I couldn't help but smile back. "Feels weird, Dad." "Good weird, though, like I can actually do this." "That's 'cause you can, Nellie." "Always could," he replied, pride evident in his voice. Yet it wasn't all smooth sailing. The lack of social interaction began to weigh on me. I missed the face-to-face conversations, even the ones that weren't always kind. The silence of the house, once a sanctuary, started to feel more like a cage. I started to look for ways to fill the social void. I joined online study groups and even started a virtual book club with a few classmates I'd reconnected with. It wasn't the same as hanging out in person, but it helped. One evening, as I closed my laptop after a long study session, my grandma called. "How's my favorite granddaughter?" she asked, her voice warm and comforting. "I'm your only granddaughter, Grandma," I teased, smiling at our ongoing joke. Details, she chuckled. "How's the distance learning going?" "It's good, actually. I mean, I miss seeing people, but I'm doing better in school now," I shared, feeling a sense of achievement. "That's my girl." "You're stronger than you know, Nellie." "Don't forget that," she said, her words lifting my spirits. Prom night was something I had dreaded for months. The very idea of attending filled me with anxiety. My parents, however, thought it would be good for me. A chance to close this chapter on a high note, as they put it. Despite my protests, I found myself nodding along to their encouragement. "It's a once-in-a-lifetime thing, Nellie. You might regret not going," Mom said, her eyes hopeful. I couldn't bring myself to argue further, even though every fiber of my being screamed against it. So there I was, in a simple dress that my mom and I had picked out, standing awkwardly at the back of the gym, trying my best to blend in with the walls. The gym was transformed, barely recognizable with all the decorations and lights. Groups of my classmates, all dressed up, were laughing and dancing, enjoying the night. I couldn't help but feel like an outsider, watching the festivities from my lonely corner. As the evening dragged on, I decided to make a quiet exit. No one would notice I was gone anyway. But just as I was about to slip out, Sarah, in her stunning dress, blocked my path. "Leaving so soon, Nellie? The party's just starting," she sneered, her voice dripping with malice. I tried to step around her, but she shoved me back a little too forcefully. "Watch where you're going," she hissed, her eyes gleaming with cruelty. The sudden push caught me off guard, and I stumbled, drawing the attention of those nearby. In seconds, I was surrounded by Sarah's friends, their laughter piercing the loud music. "Look at her, can't barely stand straight," one of them mocked, pointing directly at me. Sarah leaned in closer, her voice loud enough for her circle to hear. "Guess some things never change, huh?" Nellie, always the clumsy one. I felt my cheeks burn with embarrassment and something else. Anger, maybe, or just a deep aching sadness. "Just leave me alone, Sarah," I managed to say, my voice shaky but loud. "Oh, I will. Don't worry. Wouldn't want to ruin my night by spending another minute with you," she retorted, her words like daggers. The group's laughter followed me as I turned and ran, not stopping until I was safely outside, away from their taunting faces. Tears blurred my vision as I made my way home, the night air doing little to cool my flushed cheeks. My parents were waiting up when I got home, their faces lighting up at the sight of me. But as they took in my tear-streaked face and the defeated slump of my shoulders, their smiles faded. "What happened, honey?" Mom asked, rushing over to me. I shook my head, unable to find the words to explain the humiliation and hurt. "I just want to forget tonight ever happened," I whispered, the tears starting again as I let my parents wrap me in their arms. Their concern and love were a small comfort in the face of my pain. After the prom disaster, I was more than ready to put high school behind me. College was my chance to start fresh, to be someone new. I chose to study medicine, driven by a deep-seated desire to help others, maybe even understand a bit more about my own struggles through learning about the human body and mind. My first day at medical college felt like stepping onto another planet. Everyone was buzzing with excitement, talking about classes and future careers. I found myself outside the main lecture hall, clutching my schedule, when a girl next to me said, "Hey, you look lost too. First year." "Yeah," I replied, grateful for the conversation. "Nellie," I introduced myself. "I'm Zoe." "Nervous?" "Terrified," I admitted with a laugh. Zoe and I stuck together, finding our way to the lecture hall. Sitting down, I felt a nervous excitement bubble up inside me. This was it, my chance to really make something of myself. As weeks turned into months, I started to come into my own. I was doing well in my classes, even making a few friends. Zoe and I became inseparable, studying together and encouraging each other through the tough exams and endless assignments. Our hard work paid off, and I found myself thriving in a way I never had before. The subject of psychosomatic medicine particularly fascinated me. The idea that the mind could have such a profound effect on the body. It resonated with my own experiences, and I delved into the research with a passion. One day, after presenting a paper I'd written on stress and its physical manifestations, my professor pulled me aside. "Nellie, your work is impressive. Have you considered specializing in this field?" I was taken aback. I hadn't really thought about it. He nodded thoughtfully. "Think about it. You have a knack for understanding the complexities of the human mind and body. It's a rare gift." His encouragement bolstered my confidence, and I began to see a clear path ahead of me. I was going to use my past, my struggles, and turn them into something positive. I was going to help people heal, not just physically, but emotionally too. As the years passed, I graduated from medical college with honors, my sights set on specializing in psychosomatic medicine. My family was proud, and I, for the first time in a long time, was proud of myself too. I had turned my life around, and I was ready to face whatever came next with a newfound strength and determination. Zoe hugged me tight on graduation day. "Look at us, we made it." "Yeah, we did," I said, smiling. "Here's to new beginnings." And as we threw our caps into the air, I felt a sense of closure. The hurt and isolation of my past were behind me. Ahead lay a future full of possibilities, a chance to make a real difference, and I was ready for it, more ready than I'd ever been. After pouring years into researching the profound effects of psycho-emotional stress on the body, my work started gaining traction. I'd written extensively on how the turmoil of our minds could physically manifest, leading to real, often severe health issues. Stress, anxiety, the grind of daily life. It all could lead to negative reactions within the body, spiraling into chronic conditions. What fascinated me most was finding ways to reverse or manage these effects by addressing the root mind state. This journey of mine caught the eyes and ears of the medical community. Invitations flooded in, asking me to share my findings with peers, specialists, and even skeptics. It wasn't long before my name became somewhat of a buzzword in medical circles, a symbol of a fresh perspective on holistic healing. My big break came when I was invited as a speaker at the annual health conference. The topic I chose, the mind-body connection, psycho-emotional stress, and physical health, struck a chord. As I spoke, I could see the realization dawn on many faces. This wasn't just theory, it was reality, affecting countless lives. I walked off that stage to a sea of applause, my heart racing, not from fear but exhilaration. I'd overcome my dread of public speaking, facing down an auditorium packed with professionals, and I'd held my own. The buzz from my presentation didn't just end with applause. Post-conference, an invitation came my way that would have seemed unimaginable years ago. A dinner with the who's who of the health sector. Government officials, insurance bigwigs, clinic heads, and industry specialists, all were to be there. As the day of the dinner approached, a mix of excitement and nerves took over. This was more than just a meal. It was a networking goldmine, a chance to discuss potential collaborations to take my work to the next level. I stood in front of my mirror, makeup in hand, determined to look my best. I wasn't just representing my research. I was representing myself, my journey. I chose my dress carefully, the one that always made me feel confident and at ease. As I applied my makeup, I allowed myself a moment to reflect on the significance of this evening. It wasn't about looking no worse than the other women there. It was about feeling my best, about walking into that restaurant with my head held high, knowing I belonged. At this elegant dinner, surrounded by the health sector's elite, I felt like I was finally where I belonged. Compliments flowed my way, each one boosting my confidence more than the last. As the evening wound down, I decided it was time to head home, still riding the high of the night's successes. But as I made my way through the hallway, a familiar voice stopped me in my tracks. It was her, Sarah, my high school nightmare. "Wow, look at you. Finally figured out how to dress, huh?" Sarah's voice, laced with that same condescending tone, filled the space between us. I turned to face her, finding her just as beautiful and just as arrogant as she'd been back in school. The years had changed us both, but it seemed her spirit remained untouched by time. "Long time no see, Sarah," I said calmly. Sarah laughed, a sound that once would have sent me spiraling into anxiety. "Seriously though, how much did you have to borrow to afford a can here? This place isn't cheap." I met her gaze, steady and calm. The fear and insecurity she once inspired in me had long since faded, replaced by a strength forged in overcoming and succeeding despite people like her. Before I could respond, the organizer of the dinner, Mr. Thompson, approached, his concern evident. He asked, "Is everything all right here?" After glancing at Sarah, I nodded and grinned at him. "Thank you so much." Merely getting back in touch with a former classmate. Driven by alcohol and unfettered pride, Sarah continued her tirade without realizing the misery she was causing. She even went so far as to engage her spouse in the conversation by requesting him to partake in her joke. But as soon as her husband found out about the situation, his attitude drastically altered. He was the director of a company that was interested in my research, and I recognized him. "I'm so sorry," he began, and I was taken aback by how really he apologized. My wife's behavior is unacceptable." Then he turned to Sarah, his rage exploding. "Are you conscious of what you are doing? You are jeopardizing important opportunities with your conduct. I've been thrilled to collaborate with Dr. Nellie Stewart on this scenario, which you're developing." As her sobbing echoed across the hallway, it was surreal to watch him leading Sarah out. He returned alone a few seconds later, his expression penitent. "I can't tell you how sorry I am for my wife's behavior," he stated earnestly. "Hopefully, this won't affect our potential collaboration. Your work is invaluable." I saw my former school bully sitting outside on the steps, her makeup smeared from tears, as I was heading out after dinner. She looked up as I approached, her eyes red and puffy. "Hey, would you mind talking to him?" She hiccuped, her voice a combination of desperation and alcohol. "You seem to have his ear." I paused, looking down at her. This girl, who used to cause me a lot of trouble, is now asking for my help. The irony was not lost on me. "I'm not getting involved," I responded firmly. "This is between you and him." "But you're doing quite good." Stumbling over her words, she said, "He listens to you." "That doesn't make it my business," I remarked in a tone that prevented further discussion. I left her on the steps in her own squalor. As I headed home, I couldn't help but feel a sense of accomplishment. I had gone full circle from being bullied to becoming a woman who stood her ground without fear. Rumors about her divorce began to circulate. I would be lying if I claimed it didn't give me a sense of validation. Things were improving for me. I had found a fascinating and kind man who appreciated me for who I was. I never thought we'd be talking about a future together. I felt much more motivated to continue working. My experiences, both past and current, motivated me to want to change things. Even though the journey was unusual, it led me to this joyful and contented place, and I was appreciative of it.